really changed the tone of the show. I couldn't have done a show any other. I couldn't have done any other show than that show. I just wouldn't know how to do it.
We were filming this show, The Robbery, and I remember during the filming, the show had a lot of problems and something needed to be fixed, and I remember coming up with this solution to fix the story. And after I came up with that, like the next day, Castle Rock gave me like a $20,000 bonus and said to me, "You're the executive producer if the show gets picked up." And that was kind of a bit of a turning point for me.
I didn't realize that George was Larry. Probably, it was in that first season with that confidence order of 4. It was somewhere in there. There was I can't remember exactly what it was. There was a moment in the script that, with my fine classical actor training, I went to Larry and I said, "Larry, first of all, this would never happen to anybody, but if it did, no human being would react like this." And Larry said, "What do you mean? This happened to me, and this is exactly what I did." And I went, "Oh, okay." And it was kind of at that moment that I understood that he was writing his own experiences and his own reactions. So I made a conscious switch to leave the Woody Allen model behind and start to try and do as blatant a Larry David imitation as I could.
I loved doing those 4 episodes, and I really wanted to go back to work with these people. Because I will also say there was an immediate camaraderie with our little foursome.
After the 4 episodes were filmed, I went back to New York, and I thought, well, that's probably the end of the show, and I started to go back to my other life in New York.
Brandon was a fan, even though he wouldn't schedule the show. I remember going to his office one time for a meeting, and he showed me how he had queued up on his VCR a scene from The Stakeout that he loved. And when people would come in, he said, "I just play them this scene to show them this very funny scene." But still, it wasn't enough for him to put it on the air.
Brant Hardicoff called me in March of 1990 after we had finished making the first 4 episodes and offered me what he called Sophie's Choice. He said we could either go on the very next month, April, in a poor time slot, but perhaps be eligible then to be on the fall schedule if the show succeeded, or we could wait until the summer after he had announced his fall schedule and go on in the very best time slot he had to offer after Cheers. And I felt that was an easy choice, that I would rather take the Cheers time slot and get what had to be better ratings and think about long-term survival than the chance of being on the fall schedule.
After Cheers repeats, Thursday night at 9:30, we put on 4 original episodes of Seinfeld.
It's the hot summer hit, soon to be a series, Seinfeld, Thursday after Cheers on NBC.
Tomorrow night's the big night.
Yeah, tomorrow night.
How about this? Prime time, NBC?
How did this all happen?
5 years ago, would you thought, hey, that's going to happen?
No. I've been doing this show for 10 years.
I guess so.
And it's really a big thrill. I'd like to thank you, actually, for putting me on all these years, and because for a long time this was all I was doing, was this show and the little clubs, and that's a really exciting break.
This is just kind of a little nighttime throwaway. Now you're in the big time.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
So have you been planning on the show a long time? I know you're probably involved in the writing and everything.
Yeah, I wrote it with Larry David, who's a comedian from New York, and neither of us had ever written a TV show before, and they let us do it. NBC, I have to say, was wonderful, letting us really do the type of comedy and the type of show that we wanted to do.
And they did okay. Not great, but the audience didn't reject them. And the more closely we looked at it, what we saw was, well, it wasn't just a New York show. And for the people who had articulated a number of times, it's too Jewish, what we found is whether you were in a major market in the East, or whether you were in a small market in the West, or more importantly even, the Midwest, the numbers all seemed to be the same. And young adult men felt something was out there on television that was fresh and original, and they were connecting to it. And by God, they were funny.
They picked us up at 13. Okay, well. All right, I got through the 4 shows, okay? Somehow I got through the 4 shows, and they weren't the best 4 shows that have ever been made, but I got through those. But now, he said this number 13 to me, and I hung up that phone and I was traumatized. I'm telling you, tears came into my eyes. I was 13 shows, and I said to my fiance at the time, I said, "Oh my God, I can't do this. How am I going to come up with 13 shows? This is ridiculous." I said, "This is crazy." And I was petrified. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. This thing now is getting much bigger than it was supposed to. I was supposed to be done with this thing. And now I'm supposed to be doing 13 shows. I'm responsible for it. I'm the executive producer of the show now. I'm completely responsible for this thing. This is mine. How am I going to do this? I can't do it. I cannot do it. This is insane. What have I got myself into?
After we got this order for 13, I figure we'd be on.
At that point, I went, we're gonna be on for a little while. This is gonna work.
Now I felt, okay, now we can get to work.
We didn't really have any idea how to run a show. So Larry Charles was a friend of mine from Fridays, and we had remained friends, so I thought, well, that'd be good. Let's hire Larry.
Larry called me and said the show just got picked up for 13. You know, you want a job? And I was like, yeah, I got nothing else to do.
And Peter Melman, I just read some piece in the New York Times that he had done, and I thought, hey, that's pretty funny. This, let's hire him.
I was a freelance magazine writer. I had written for the Washington Post, but at the time I was magazine writing, and I had met Larry David in New York maybe twice. And then I bumped into him out here, and he said, I'm doing this little TV show with Jerry Seinfeld. Maybe you could write a script. And I was like, well, I've never written dialogue. I've never really made anything up except if you count a few quotes in my articles.
Larry Charles had never written a sitcom. Peter Melman had never written a sitcom. And we did pretty well with them.
When I would get a script, I would look at it and I would read it and I would say, who cares? What are they talking about? Who cares what lining somebody has in a jacket? Who cares if they use real turkey for a sandwich? Why are they so picky? And then the actors would read it, and it would be funny, and I would laugh, and I would say, okay, I just don't get it, I guess. Fortunately, the network guys didn't get it either, and they left us alone.
The first thing I remember at the Chinese restaurant is I remember the exact restaurant I was in with Larry. It was Genghis Cohen's on Fairfax, and we were waiting for a table, and I remember him writing the idea down.
You get 23 minutes to do the show, whatever. Let's just have them wait 23 minutes for a table.
I read that script and I went, nothing happens. Am I missing pages? Literally, they go to the restaurant, they stand around, they can't get a table. Nothing happens. Is this? Are they trying to save money?
NBC, when we suggested that we wanted to do this one set idea where the gang just waits for a table the entire show and never gets it, that they thought that was very static and not appealing, and they didn't want us to write it. They didn't want us to film it, and after we filmed it, they held it back and didn't run it until towards the end of the season because they were so sure that this was going to really be one of the real bombs of the season.
I knew the network was up in arms about this episode. They thought this was a betrayal. They thought this was just sacrilege. How could we, a struggling nothing show like this that nobody's watching, how dare you assholes try and pull something off like this?
I wasn't surprised that NBC wasn't crazy about that show because, not only was our show unlike any other shows, but now this show was like, within that context, this show was just like crazy extreme. It was bizarre. It's a bizarre show.
But to their credit, the only thing that they said was, we completely disagree with this idea, but if you want to do it, go ahead. And I thought that's all you can ask for, is they gave us the shot.
I feel like just walking over there and taking some food off of somebody's plate.
I'll tell you what. There's $50 in it for you if you do it.
What do you mean?
You walk over to that table, you pick up an egg roll, you don't say anything, you eat it, say thank you very much, wipe your mouth, walk away, I give you $50.
Should I do it, George?
For $50? I'll put my face in this soup and blow.
Turns out that became one of the episodes that really put the show into another category.
I didn't get it. And I remember fighting that episode, looking at the cut of the episode, and it was funny, but I really felt, you know, Jerry, Larry, doesn't something have to happen in this show? And of course, I fueled for them all about it's the show where nothing happens.
Well, what's the show about?
It's about nothing.
No story?
No, forget the story.
You gotta have a story.
Who says you gotta have a story? Remember when we were waiting for that table in that Chinese restaurant that time? That could be a TV show.
One of the turning points in the writing for me came with the